All right, everybody. Ooh, that's nice and loud. We hope you're having a fantastic conference so far, enjoying your time here at SG Europe. Now, real quick, as a show of hands, do we have anyone out here working in a business or working in a startup that's trying to disrupt a traditionally cumbersome industry? Absolutely, okay, we got the right crowd here. This is good. Before we go through, we've got some absolutely amazing speakers upcoming. There's going to be a little bit of time for Q&A at the end of it. So you can go on to slido.com, #SGEurope, or use the Startup Grind app and the Q&A part of that, and hopefully your question will get answered at the end. Now, without further ado, I'm delighted to introduce Reshma Sohoni, one of the most influential women in VC and tech today, a founding partner of Seedcamp, which has invested in over 300 companies, including 3 unicorns, Revolut, TransferWise, UiPath, one of the best funds in all of Europe. And coming out with her is Ishaan Malhi, who's founded Trussell, which is the UK's first online mortgage broker. Towards the end of last year, they raised 13 million in their round, and I'm really excited to hear the conversations it's going to be in. So can we have a nice, warm Startup Grind welcome for Ishaan Rahami?
Cool. Well, good to be here. We've known each other a super long time, so this is always fun. I think Seedcamp, you introduced us kindly, so I won't go into that. We'll just jump right in. We're kind of going to start with today and go backwards after. So today-ish, I guess tell us a little bit about Trussell, obviously, and kind of how much money you guys have raised, a little bit of the stage you're at, users, volume that's gone through, and then we'll look backwards a little bit on your journey.
Yeah, sure. So maybe just to start off, if I can get a quick show of hands from people. So hold up your hand if you expect buying a home to be a quick, stress-free, or transparent process. Okay, so we're building this company for you guys. So we started Trussell a couple of years ago now, and the business was born out of my own frustration of trying to get a mortgage. As was mentioned, we're the UK's first online mortgage broker, so we're trying to streamline and automate as much of the end-to-end advice and brokerage process so that customers can get instantly approved on the right mortgage for them that is automatically switched to a new mortgage when there's a better deal available. And the idea is we take what is traditionally known as the biggest and most complex financial decision of people's lives, and we make it something that they never have to worry about. And in terms of kind of where we are today, we've grown the team now to 115 people. So from kind of just myself up to 115, which is 3 years after launch. We've raised 20 million in funding, and now we're doing just shy of 100 million pounds a month in terms of mortgages submitted to banks.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing, right, in 3 years. And I think, probably a lot of folks in the audience haven't quite got to that stage, so we'll dig into that a little bit more. And we'll, touch a lot, hopefully, on this topic of how do you come into this very traditional set of markets and try to disrupt. But kind of looking forward, if I'm sitting with you here, I'm kind of thinking you're sailing, into the distance now. Everything's set. You've got a team. You've got all the money you want. I mean, what are you guys looking at for the next part of your journey? Is it all smooth sailing?
No, definitely not. And I think, we still very much kind of, I think Jeff Bezos puts it best when he talks about day one. We still very much believe we're at day one. So there's so much more that we need to deliver in terms of achieving on the vision that I just laid out, of getting that instant approval so that the mortgage is something you don't have to worry about. And for now, it's absolutely building towards that. So it's about scaling the team, it's about scaling culture, it's about scaling growth. We've gone from that startup phase into that scale-up phase, which brings a whole new host of challenges.
Yeah, and is that the case? Are there a whole new set of learnings and challenges? You believe there's a real demarcation between startup and scale-up?
Yeah, big time. I speak to a lot of friends about this that have also started their businesses, and sometimes we describe it as the transition from founder to CEO. Whereas a founder, you're kind of wearing every hat. You're running product, you're running tech, you're running HR, you're running marketing, you're doing compliance, you're doing a bunch of things that you're not qualified to do and probably shouldn't be doing. But that's just what it is, so you're doing all of them. And that gets to a point where you hit kind of, 40, 50 people, where you look around and you think, okay, I'm the leader of this organization, and my role needs to evolve accordingly. And then when you get to 100, you hit kind of another step where you're still sort of, very much a CEO, but a CEO of a 100-person organization just requires different structure and process and an allocation of time to invest in areas which you wouldn't ordinarily have had invested in when there were 50 people, because you're solving for different problems that don't exist.
And I mean, do you still enjoy that? Because I think, we've invested in 300 plus companies. I definitely think we have absolutely a set of founders who love being the founder, right? And working on 100 things, and they're obsessed with being the tech founder if they were, or a product kind of design founder, or the salesy founder that they were, and never, they don't seem to want to kind of become the CEO founder. Do you enjoy that? And
yeah, no, I do enjoy it. I enjoy it, I think, because, aside from kind of starting the business to solve this burning problem that I had and experienced, the desire to kind of start a business was for this opportunity, right? To kind of to grow myself as an individual. And for as long as I'm still learning at the rate that I'm learning, and I feel I'm the best person to take this company to the next stage, I'll continue to try and evolve with the pace at which the company's scaling. And it's like with any job, right? You never enjoy 100% of it. There's always some aspects which are kind of not the most exciting. But when you look at the bigger picture, yeah, absolutely.
And so what's the exciting bits for you as what are things you're kind of doubling down on as CEO, and maybe recruiting for the other strategic pieces?
Yeah, I think, so it's people and it's product. And I think delivering the customer experience is a function of those two. So it's funny, when I think of my role, I really think of myself as a product manager, but where my product is the company and my users are my employees. And so if you think about NPS, which
That's fascinating. Yeah. No,
so,
go on.
Carry on. So when you think about customer satisfaction, and you think about customer acquisition, and you think about brand awareness for your customers, ultimately there is a journey of different touch points where you're trying to kind of delight customers from start to finish, such that they have an evangelical experience and they go and tell all of their friends and family. I'm trying to do that for my employees. I'm trying to create an employer brand. I'm trying to attract the right employees that are, align with our cultural values, that believe in our mission, bring them into the company, and then create a phenomenal user experience for them, right from the onboarding phase to the kind of development phase to the retention phase, and ultimately converting them as evangelists. And I think if I've only got that viewpoint now that we're at this scale, but ultimately I think both of those things converge to being one. And so if you're delivering a great brand, and you look at some of the greatest brands out there, the way the employers and the customers feel about that brand tends to converge.
Now, note to self, I need to find more founders that think like that. All right, so that's actually a great point to go backwards then in your journey. When we met, it was basically you at Second Home? Yeah, Second Home, right? So go back to that, and back to the topic, I guess, of, it's a cumbersome market. And I think you've gone on the record many times sort of saying you came at it very much from a frustrated consumer angle, right? So not someone who's been selling more, well, a little bit of that experience, but really sort of, building a mortgage business or technical at all, either in that sense. So, I mean, how did you think about, all right, now is the time and I'm the guy to get, disrupt this space?
Yeah, it was a few things. I think just kind of quick bit of background. So I started out my career at an investment bank in the mortgages team there. And I very quickly realized that wasn't the right culture for me in terms of where I wanted my career to progress. So I left that, and I saw how technology was totally transforming our personal and professional lives. And I started working with a few accelerators, incubators, startups, and even VC funds. And it was there that I kind of developed this product lens of being able to look at pain points that we felt on a day-to-day basis and think about how technology could solve them and provide a solution for them. And simultaneously, I was going through the mortgage process. So the way that I looked at it is you had these three things coming together. There was my professional experience in mortgages, my personal frustration of, if I can't figure this out, having been in the industry, how on earth can anyone else? And then the fact that I've seen how product can be applied to solving different problems in different industries. And over time, you just kind of, the problem just kind of keeps you up at night until you think this has got to be solved. And you think you want to be the one that solves it.
And talk about the first sort of 6 months. What were kind of key things you did? Because it's such a massive sector, but also massively, regulated and political and so forth, and have a lot of behemoths in there. How did you break the problem down in those first 6 to 12 months, really, to say how you were going to attack it?
Yeah, so I think I had a big advantage that a lot of founders have, which is I had been through the process myself. And I had experienced that frustration firsthand. I think the best thing that I did at the outset is probably the thing that I now regret not doing more of, which is talking to customers. I still have a spreadsheet of, going to customers, talking to them about their different pain points, trying to understand as much as possible about the nuances of where they felt the process was frustrating, which you can't always get from statistical data. And I think too often people bias to A/B tests or looking at, which experiment that we're running has statistical significance. I think you've just got to talk to users. You've got to figure out where are they getting blocked? Where are they kind of falling down? Where is the process not working for them in the way that they would wish it did? And then build up from that. So that was the same for me. Whilst I was a user, I wasn't 100% of use cases.
Yeah.
I was self-employed at the time. I had left a job in the industry, so I had an above-average education of the process. But the more and more I spoke to people, the more we were able to build up different archetypes of customers and say, right, there's this person that's a first-time buyer that's anxious about the process, and the education level about mortgages is relatively low. And there's this person who's a trader at an investment bank who thinks they know absolutely everything about mortgages, whose education is pretty high, and whose sophistication is also high. The same product is not going to work for both customers. And then you start to develop more kind of personalized user journeys, and you start to kind of nuance your communication in that personalized way as well.
And there's two great examples of people or founders, CEOs who continue to do that. I think, Will Shu at Deliveroo famously kind of still rides his scooter bike around delivering food, right, and talking to users a lot. And Tavit and kind of Christo at TransferWise and a bunch of their team and their VC investors get on the phone within the call center and take customer complaint calls to this day, right? To stay close to their users. So I think that's an incredibly powerful element as folks in the audience are thinking about building your businesses. And in terms of again those early days, so moving from product. Okay, you have to actually code and build, and I think you've gone again to talk a lot about you haven't digitized everything. There's a human element.
Yeah.
And talk a little bit about that, particularly in a cumbersome market, the trade-offs between human and digital, and I think getting the tech talent and team, building around that.
Yeah. So there's a few things to solve for. The first is this is one of the biggest and most important financial decisions of people's lives. And so this is not something that everyone is yet ready to go and do in one click. On the other hand, this is something that is incredibly cumbersome. There's a lot of back and forth meetings, phone calls, paperwork exchanged, which is just not an efficient process and is prone to human error at many, many touch points throughout that journey. This is also, because of those inefficiencies, a process that consumers traditionally have had to pay for. So when you're dealing with a mortgage broker, which 3/4 of all customers that get a mortgage do, they have to pay around £500 on average, sometimes up to 1% of the mortgage amount, which is crazy.
Yeah.
On the other hand, they're getting paid by the banks for actually finding them someone to lend to. So in our case, we wanted to deliver this service to customers for free, and in order to do that, we need to make sure that the process was efficient enough to pass those savings on to consumers without being so efficient and automated that consumers felt they were dealing with a robot, not a human being. And that is just a constant kind of seesaw that we're balancing. And you've always got your early adopters who are kind of constantly looking out for the new technology and way to do things. You've got your late adopters that tend to be their friends, that take some persuading to do. And then you've got the mass market, and you think about those that are kind of, only just getting comfortable with using Uber. And so we're kind of on that evolution, and I think our branding will move in step as well. Interestingly, I remember speaking to the CMO of Purple Bricks, who said, as they were becoming increasingly automated over time, their branding was becoming increasingly people-led.
Interesting.
Because they were approaching that mass market over time. So there's a balance about the perception and the reality of the process.
Yeah. And I guess going back to kind of recruiting.
Yeah.
How are you recruiting in the early days? How are you thinking about team build?
Badly. Yeah. No, recruiting is really, really, really difficult. And it's something that, and I think you speak to any founder, they will always wish they spent more time on. I'm no different to that either. But your team and your people really are going to be driving the business forwards. As a founder, you've got to take responsibility for culture. But one of the ways of driving culture is by, hiring, firing, promoting the right people and making sure that you understand what you're hiring for.
Yeah.
Like, there are a lot of software engineers out there. There are a lot of marketers. There are a lot of financial directors. There are a lot of salespeople. But finding those that tick the criteria that you have on a competency basis, as well as a value alignment basis, is something that I think you can never spend enough time on.
And then, okay, so taking from startup towards kind of growth and into mass market a bit more. Maybe spending a little time on how you expanded. One of the key areas you guys have really done a lot in is partnerships. And we try to, we see so many startups that just kind of go their own way, and it's all, they're going to do it all themselves. But distribution-wise, you guys have really opened yourselves up and partnered with Zoopla and others, USwitch and others as well. Maybe talk a little bit about that and why you made that decision to, instead of go at it alone and just probably spend tons of money on Facebook and Google versus, strong partnerships.
That's part of the reason that we didn't, right? Which is, for any B2C company that is servicing customers, there are a lot of people fighting for your attention. And so you've got to be really smart about how you kind of get customers to know about and ultimately use your product. For a category like mortgages, it's actually the second most expensive keyword group on AdWords, on Google, second to insurance.
Wow.
And so we knew that we were not going to have a sustainable business model if we were totally reliant on Google AdWords. Because if you think about it, a platform like that requires customers to have intent. So if you're waiting till customers are actually searching for, how do I get a mortgage, you're way, way, way at the bottom of the funnel. To actually get ahead of that, we need to understand the customer journey better. And that, again, came out from talking to customers. And so when you think about a mortgage process, this is a high-value, low-frequency decision that is a very considered one. And if it's a considered one, it's going to take a long time, and you're going to interact with different touch points. So you may interact with a property portal to have a look at properties and see which ones you can afford. You may look at comparison sites to look at different options, and you may go to an estate agent or download a credit report to understand whether or not you could do it. And so at each one of those points, we've secured a partnership with Zoopla on the property portal, with USwitch on the comparison site, with Totally Money on the free credit reports, and that, in addition to building a brand through PR, has really helped us get a decent CPA.
And are those, I don't know if you can share, are those revenue share or they're
revenue share, yeah. So it's kind of, it's low risk because we only pay once we get paid.
Yeah.
Which, from a cash point of view, and cash is king, whether you're Apple or you're an early stage startup, really helps.
Yeah. No, so I think there's such an important point in there. Like, you are giving up some of that revenue, right? You are sharing, but it's a better distribution model, right, than just spending money on pure advertising. And take a question from here. It's a good question around kind of expansion market-wise. Obviously, mortgages and the journey is different in different countries. Are you guys thinking about international expansion? If, when, how?
So for now, so the market in the UK is pretty large. There's 11 million mortgages currently outstanding, which make up 1.3 trillion pounds worth of volume. And each year there's an additional 250 billion of mortgages that are pumped out. So we told you we're at 100 million at the moment, kind of, per month. That's a tiny, tiny, tiny share of a massive market. So we're really focused on nailing this market first. And the way, the way that we think about growth is thinking about products related to that service. So we see a world where people come to us not only for their mortgage, but they might get their legal help from us, insurance help, maybe sorting out their utilities, their Netflix, their broadband. So going further in the home ownership journey rather than expanding internationally.
Any advice for those, because it's a question about expanding internationally, from some of the things you've looked at or learned? Or?
Yeah, I think it depends on your market. So I think one of the biggest things I would say is it's quite easy to get caught up in the kind of the buzz of, oh, we've got to be a global company. And I think VCs definitely have a part to play in that as well, of when are you going to go global, how are you going to expand? I think one of the biggest things that founders and CEOs and startups in general have a problem with is focus. So I think I would be comfortable firstly just pushing back on that. And you can only really do that if you're confident about your market sizing. So the kind of advice would be really clear about how big a market this is. Don't be overly heroic in your assumptions. If it's a tiny market in the UK or the business requires sort of network effects internationally, like a social community, then that's fine.
Yep.
But if it doesn't necessarily need to, wait till you've cracked your own market and then think about doing it abroad.
So I get the last word then on that is, as a VC, I mean, definitely correlation in terms of the highest valued companies, our largest companies, definitely is correlated to global rollout. That said, there are some markets, within prop tech, health as well, where you have massive multi-billion, trillion-dollar markets, within one country, right? So it's not just a one-size-fits-all. You do have to think about markets and size. So, super. Thank you so much. Hopefully, you guys all got a little bit of insight onto how to disrupt a cumbersome market. And yeah, thanks. That was fun.
Thank you.